The unending torment of serving as a death guard in Warhammer 40K revolves around perpetual deterioration. For 10,000 years I've witnessed my form crumbling away, and yet I persist. Each dawn, chunks of my tissue flake off gradually. Each evening, fresh mutations sprout to fill the voids. My fellow warriors accept this infinite loop as a divine favor. Only I recall the era when we branded it a malediction. The whispers of the Plague Father intensify within my thoughts over every elapsed century, offering solace if I'd merely yield utterly. The true horror gnawing at me isn't the corrosion devouring my frame, but the growing allure of his proposition. Folks claim the Death Guard don't actually perish. We just stubbornly ignore our own demises until the bitter end. I consider this view too simplistic. Demise isn't a moment to accept or reject. It's a gradual ritual, deliberate and unhurried, much like any pursuit of true value, and I've been unraveling for more than 10,000 years. The passages of the Rotspire groan beneath my patrols. Long ago, this craft carried another title, its exterior spotless and adorned with imperial symbols. These days, the vessel pulses with life, its walls expanding under hidden forces before shrinking in ragged breaths. Moisture seeps from every inch, not ordinary liquid, but a thick golden ooze reeking of curdled dairy and metal. I drag my armored digits across the bulkhead, sensing the structure quiver under my caress. The Rotspire recognizes my essence. I'm woven into its very being, just like the swollen pests that dart through its air ducts. My narthecium dangles weightily from my belt, its formerly holy instruments now charred and encrusted. The reductor operates flawlessly, harvesting gene seed through automated exactness. Yet the containers brim with a substance far murkier than the essence that once marked us as Astartes. What I gather nowadays teems with revived vigor, wriggling with tiny intent. Every harvest serves as both a clinical act and a sacred observance. Each progenoid throbs with the graces of Grandfather Nurgle. The novices gather in the foul sanctum, what I've dubbed the septic chamber. 20 hopefuls line up rigidly, their forms already displaying early mutations. A few show initial bloating, their hides taut over distended bellies. Others display the telltale pallor, their skin adopting that ashen verdant tint, destined to define their look. Every one of them fixes me with burning gazes, yearning for the boons I deliver. I can still picture my own induction, even as the specifics blur across the ages. The agony lingers sharp, though, the sensation of my viscera melting inside, my guts turning into a nursery for maladies so intricate they gained basic awareness. I remember howling until my throat shredded, then rasping on through a gullet infested with writhing invaders. The young ones facing me will endure comparable agonies. Not all will pull through. Those who do will emerge forever altered. "Brothers," I rasp, my words a bubbling murmur that reverberates damply through the room. This day, you claim the Grandfather's favors. This day, you surpass the bounds of your old lives. This day, your path into exalted decay commences. I step toward the lead novice, once an Imperial Guardsman. From his features, a faint regimental mark from the Morian Iron Guard remains, though the pigment fades as the flesh softens below. He stands firm as I lift my narthecium. They always do. By the point they enter this hall, they've weathered suffering no ordinary soul could fathom. The reductor activates with a whine, its bit piercing the novice's throat in flawless incision, but I'm not removing. I'm infusing. The canister on my glove holds a paste of viral strains, microbial hordes, and shards of my tainted gene seed. The blend surges into the aspirant's veins, and I observe his stare dilate, then haze as the plague embeds. Methodically, I progress along the row. Each dose differs subtly from the previous. Grandfather Nurgle revels in diversity amid decay's myriad forms. No pair of Death Guard bears matching torments. It's among our prime assets and the root of our distinctiveness in the Legion. Some evolve acidic veins that corrode their plating. Others transform into breeding hives for bug legions that erupt from gashes in combat. My personal boon appears as ceaseless breakdown and rebirth, my skin eternally peeling and reforming in perpetual motion. As I deliver the last rite, The space echoes with retching noises. The novices crumple sequentially, their frames spasming while the change surges. Vomit and ichor gather on the flooring, blending with unnamed secretions. The odor is sublime, a rich medley of warped vital functions. I draw it in fully, relishing the scent via senses evolved to cherish such essences. The suffering is your ally henceforth, I declare. Let them twist and convulse in their torment. It will stay with you forever. Eventually, you'll learn to value it just as I have. Suffering confirms that you're alive. Suffering is the grandfather's murmur of affection. I abandon them to their misery. There's no further aid I can offer at this point. They will either evolve, their flesh accepting the blight I've instilled, or perish in excruciating pain, their corpses repurposed into the organic fuel sustaining the vessel. Either result honors the Plague Father in equal measure. My responsibilities as an apothecary go far beyond initiating fresh acolytes. I also care for the Rotspire's propulsion cores, enormous living structures that bear little resemblance to the fusion drives they originated as. The propulsion chamber unfolds ahead of me, a vast temple to affliction. Swelling tumors blanket every inch, beating together like an enormous organ. Conduits snake from these meaty bulges to the bulkheads, circulating tainted liquids across the entire craft. The machine souls that formerly dwelled here have descended into lunacy long ago. Their digital minds corrupted by chaos spirits, twisting their reasoning into babbling chaos. The lead mechanic greets me with a tilt of his distorted skull. He might have been human once, or maybe a servitor, but his shape has mutated so completely that his origins defy guesswork. Mechanical tendrils emerge from his spine, yet, unlike the sleek designs of Imperial craft, these limbs twist like bowels, slithering and squirming on their own. Brother Varkas. He rumbles from a maw that splits upright over his former torso. The tertiary chamber demands your focus. Its inflammation has intensified. I incline my head, grasping the gravity. The Rotspire's drives live in manners that would appall even Mars's most unorthodox forge priest. They endure ailments, contract plagues, undergo expansion surges, and alterations. My task is to guide these organic functions toward our goals, instead of letting them spiral out of control. It's a precarious equilibrium, permitting sufficient change to sustain operations while averting the wild proliferation that could breach the outer shell. The tertiary chamber throbs with furious crimson, its heat far exceeding safe levels. I press my palm to the quivering bulk, sensing the erratic beats of its spasms. An intruder has embedded itself inside, a subordinate contagion endangering the dominant one, such is the irony of our being. Even beings born of illness must defend against particular afflictions. I mix a brew from the array of phials secured at my waist. Each holds a targeted breed of viral agents that assault and eradicate microbes. In the era prior to my rebirth, I wielded comparable instruments to heal infections in injured comrades. These days, I deploy them to cure plagues within plagues, an iterative ritual that occasionally amuses me in its grim irony. The injector from my narthecium pierces the chamber, and I push the syringe. The response comes swiftly. The inflamed crimson flesh starts to discolor. Spots of emerald and ebony emerge as the predators activate. The mechanism emits a noise akin to approval while the chambers throb steady. It should endure through the next crusade, I assure him, despite how we both long ago discarded such mundane reckonings of duration. Crusades meld into one another in my recollections. Worlds and sectors dissolve into an endless flow of ruin and infestation. We deliver Nurgle's blessings across the stars, disseminating them with the zeal of the faithful. Every planet succumbing to pestilence becomes a chant offered to our Lord. Every tainted biosphere turns into a realized invocation. While I labor, I detect murmurs. The sounds arise from the air shafts, a choir of youthful pitches chanting as one. Nurglings, the tiny fiends that swarm through the ship's every nook. They monitor me without cease, relaying my deeds to their overlord, the immense foul entity lurking in the underlevels. I've become inured to their gaze, even drawing solace from it. Being watched affirms one's purpose, provides observers for one's piety. The grandfather approves of you, apothecary. They titter, their tones reverberating with a tinny echo along the vents. You nurture his realm so diligently. I respond with a subtle bow of my head. Direct exchanges with the nurglings often devolve into endless looping dialogues that divert from my obligations. They're akin to youngsters, inquisitive and prankish, though their focus wanes quickly. A small mercy. Following a handful of additional hushed remarks, they lose interest and dart further into the vessel's framework, seeking to plague another soul aboard. The drive overseer points to an adjacent swelling, one that escaped my notice earlier. A recent emergence, he clarifies. It started developing right after our prior warp transit. I suspect it's trying to convey a message. I inspect the swelling with detached expertise. Unlike the rhythmic bulges that the bulk of the engine chamber consists of, this setup, which presents a far more organized look. Its exterior is blanketed in structures akin to vocal folds, quivering faintly with every gust of warm, tainted breeze flowing inside the space. I draw nearer, and the mass reacts to my approach, its tremors growing stronger. "What message are you conveying?" I murmur, mostly to myself rather than the protrusion. Astonishingly, it replies. Not through speech, but via visions surging into my thoughts. I behold a world of deep blue skies and lush greenery. I witness spores plummeting via its skies, borne along by stellar gusts. I observe woodlands decaying, ponds congealing into muck, creatures crumpling as their internals dissolve inside. I view the inhabitants, resembling humanoids, yet distinct from true humans, their forms bursting with pustules while they wail to deities offering no reply. The apparition dissipates, leaving me briefly unsteady. The protrusion has revealed our forthcoming objective, a planet primed for Nurgle's bounty. Such mental exchanges aren't rare on the Rotspire. The divide separating normal reality from the warp thins out in these areas, enabling signals unattainable in other locales. I'll convey the sighting to our master, though I reckon he's already attuned to it via his personal bond with the plague god. My patrol persists, guiding me along the twisting passages of the craft. I encounter other Death Guard brethren, each displaying their personal array of ailments and alterations. We exchange brief salutes or signs, dialogue redundant among those bound by our shared state. Though our maladies vary individually, our camaraderie surpasses that of any devoted Space Marine legion. Our unity stems not from creed or rigor, but from collective agony, from the constant withstanding of agonies that would shatter weaker wills. I arrive at a fork where the hallway divides into 3 routes. The left route heads to the chambers I oversee more from routine than need. Rest seldom visits me these days, and on those occasions it does. My reveries blend seamlessly with the delirious mirages tormenting my alert moments. The right route connects to the command deck, where our leader charts the trajectory of our unending war against the Imperium. The middle route plunges into the ship's depths, where existence frays and warp inhabitants emerge unbound. I select the middle route. There's an individual I need to confer with. The drop is extended, punctuated by escalating decay. The somewhat preserved higher levels yield to zones where rot has progressed unchecked. In these parts, the vessel is utterly claimed by living tissue. The bulkheads throb noticeably, breathing apparatuses that convert the stagnant atmosphere into poisonous vapors. The ground under my soles yields with a wet sound, formed from a mycelial layer many feet deep. Vines stretch toward my footwear as I proceed, identifying me as a carrier of fresh pathogens they could assimilate. The heat climbs with every deck I drop. Upon arriving at my goal, the atmosphere hangs heavy with dampness and particles, like mist, restricting sight to mere paces. The room I step into extends farther than the ship's limits should permit, a warp rift indicator near a demonic presence. Morbiduck stands ready for me. His enormous bulk commands the chamber's heart, a great unclean one, greater demon of Nurgle, manifestation of the plague god's munificence. His swollen frame towers almost 20 feet high, his hide a mosaic of wounds, blisters, and gaping ulcers that ooze endlessly. A lone massive antler juts from his head's left flank, the right one snapped in some forgotten clash. His abdomen, swollen and see-through, outlines the shapes of beings gliding in his gut fluids. His grin spans from one ear to the other, bearing lines of decayed fangs and shrunken gums. Little brother, he welcomes me, his tone oddly tuneful for such a repugnant figure. You've arrived to discuss your advancements. I lower myself before him, driven by true respect rather than dread. Morbidux has mentored me since my change, steering me through the nuances of Nurgle's favors with fatherly forbearance. He demonstrated how to repurpose my healer's expertise for our renewed patron, converting the hallowed roles of my past office into ceremonies venerating the Lord of Decay. The fresh recruits have gotten their initial doses, I update him. Their evolutions advance as anticipated. The vessel's mechanisms hold steady, even with the irregularity in the third chamber. Morbidux inclines his head, causing waves across the layers of blubber hiding his throat. And how fares your personal path, apothecary? Has your essence accepted the boons bestowed upon you? The inquiry startles me, despite its familiarity. Morbidux poses this to me at each encounter, and my response always falls short for us both, even following eons of service. Despite my commitment to Nurgle, a stubborn fragment of my old self clings on. Not from any lingering allegiance to that deceitful emperor, whose title now triggers surges of foul ichor in my throat, but from the gnawing realization that my metamorphosis has stripped away something vital. I serve him with unwavering zeal. I respond with measured words. My expertise furthers the grand design of the grandfather throughout the stars. Morbidux emits a rumble, akin to gusts howling past a ruined dwelling. Yet you hold fast to the echoes of who you once were. Yet you carry out your tasks as if they were burdens, not ecstatic declarations of belief. He shifts closer, his pustulant visage inches from my own. The rest have accepted their essence. Varkas, they delight in the boons granted to them. Why do you fight against total submission? No reply I could offer would appease him. How do I convey that my hesitation isn't defiance, but a deliberate safeguard? I hold on to this separation, this last defense between my mind and utter debasement, terrified of the entity I could turn into if it falls. Maybe Morbidux presses on amid my quiet. You need a deeper bond with the grandfather. Perhaps you've settled too deeply into your position, too assured in your habits. A wave of unease courses through me. Such intimate contact with Nurgle isn't a venture any mortal, even an Astartes approaches without dread. Those who endure it frequently vanish into oblivion, their selves overwhelmed and absorbed by the chaos deity's immense aura. I've toiled loyally for 10,000 years, I declare, a hint of urgency slipping into my tone despite my efforts. My loyalty knows no bounds. But loyalty absent delight is simply duty, Morbidux retorts. The grandfather craves offspring who seize his offerings with full fervor, who grasp that what fools call rot is truly the birth of fresh existence. A shudder ripples across the vessel before I can counter. The chamber's fleshy barriers seize up in spasm, and a wailing cry bursts from all directions simultaneously. The rot spire has re-emerged into reality, the shift's shock rippling through its vital tissues. Morbidux rises, his focus pulled by the chaos. We've reached our destination, he declares. The planet I revealed to you stands ready for our graces. Depart, ready your comrades for planetfall. We'll resume this talk when you return. Grateful for the interruption, I incline my head and retreat from the demon. As I pivot to go, Morbidux summons me once more. Ponder my counsel, apothecary. The grandfather's forbearance stretches wide, yet it has limits. In time, every child of his must wholly accept his affection, or endure his ire. That warning trails me as I climb toward the higher levels. Nurgle's ire unfolds as horrors eclipsing death itself, plagues that render even the Reaper's agonies seem kind in contrast. I've witnessed fellow warriors, derelict in their roles, twisted into spawn, their forms dissolving into structureless blobs of ever-shifting tissue, with fragments of awareness left to comprehend their doom. By the moment I attain the upper levels, the craft has steadied. The warp jump finished. We hover above the intended globe. Peering through grimy, growth-covered slits, I spy hints of a verdant orb tinged with azure. At this remove, it looks untouched, pure. Before long, it'll swell the ranks of worlds we've graced previously. its life networks tainted, its inhabitants reshaped into carriers for Nurgle's perpetual trials. The launch bay buzzes with motion as the Death Guard gear up for descent. Plague Marines inspect their armaments, their actions methodical and languid. Haste has no place in our ranks. No wild frenzy like the rage-fueled hordes of Khorne or the thrill chasers of Slaanesh. We proceed with the relentless calm of entropy, confident that everything yields in the end. In the imminent clash, my duties split in two. As healer, I'll collect gene seed from formidable foes, especially should we clash with loyalist space marines. As plague bearer, I'll oversee the release of the bioagents we've bred for this very orb. Every world demands a bespoke strategy, a pestilence fitted to its unique biology. The craft in devising such fits counts among the rare parts of my service that yet stirs contentment in me. Lord Poulos, overseer of the Rotspire, speaks to the gathered Death Guard. His bulk has ballooned across the ages to the point where a palanquin bears him, borne by a horde of Nurglings that scamper underfoot like vermin. His plate, formerly the noble emerald of the Death Guard, has rusted to a patchy rust, interrupted by swells of bloated skin pushing through rents in the ceramite. A thicket of horns adorns his brow, signifying his status among Nurgle's chosen. Quote tutor. He rasps, his words gurgling via a breathing mask. That has outlived its intended role, transforming into a carrier for airborne diseases. The planet beneath us has always existed in rigid conformity, untouched by disorder. Its people revere deceptive deities of structure and inertia. We deliver freedom from their lifeless routine. We deliver the reality they've been shielded from. That existence and demise aren't foes, but stages in an unending loop of rebirth. A wave of agreement echoes from the gathered troops, a harsh mix of phlegmy coughs, wheezing gasps, and mucousy chuckles. I chime in without thinking, even as my mind lingers uneasily on my exchange with Morbidox. After all these years, have I yet to fully embrace our mission? Is a fragment of me still holding on to the Imperial creed from my upbringing? The descent capsules stand ready, their insides coated in slime and various fluids. In contrast to the sterile, functional ones employed by faithful warriors, these have been utterly defiled, their mechanical essences supplanted by lesser fiends that steer their fall with wicked cunning. I climb into one with 4 fellow soldiers. We strap in as securely as possible, using bindings that look more like gut strings than metal straps. The trip downward blurs into a rush of feelings, the fierce jolts upon hitting the air layer, the howls from the fiend tied to our vessel, the odor of my comrades, their ailments surging amid the strain of landing on this world, the flavor of eagerness, sharp and sugary against my palate. Then the collision, a jarring thud that would slay an unmodified person, but only rattles us inside our tainted suits. The capsule bursts apart like spoiled produce, spilling us onto the ground. We step out into a vista of flawlessly arranged buildings, pale edifices soaring in precise symmetry beneath an intensely azure heaven. The difference between this barren setting and our diseased bodies couldn't be sharper. We form a blemish expanding over a pristine surface, a malignancy injected into vital matter. The locals scatter as we advance, their lithe figures gliding with an elegance that's almost profane in its flawlessness. They're human-like, yet unmistakably alien. Their flesh is soft lilac, their arms and legs elongated and fragile compared to human standards. Their cries carry a melodic tone, akin to poorly handled flutes. I prime my bolt gun, yet hold my shot. My main goal isn't battle here. I unclip a vial from my waist, among the many I've readied for this operation. Within, it squirms a batch of microbes tailored to this planet's ecosystem, crafted to propagate swiftly via wind and streams, contaminating every organism it meets. The outcomes differ by the victim's build, but everyone will feel Nurgle's welcome somehow. With a turn, I trigger the vial's release. A mist of particles bursts forth, swept by the gusts toward the escaping aliens. I observe with expert contentment as the initial particles connect. The reaction hits fast and vividly. The aliens nearest the mist falter, their smooth motions turning chaotic. One drops to all fours, paws gripping its neck as the flesh swells and blisters. Nearby, my squad clashes with the foe's guardians, fighters and shells like bug exteriors. Their arms launch focused energy rays that cut the air with exacting accuracy. When those rays hit the Death Guard, they sear through warped plating and dead tissue, yet inflict minimal real harm. Our frames, fueled by Nurgle's might, endure blows that would shatter other fighters. I navigate the fray deliberately, placing my vials at key spots to optimize the spread of our germ agents. While operating, I track the illness's advance, observing its impact on various life. The vegetation reacts quickest, lush growths fading and decaying mere moments after contact. The foreign guards resist longer, their coverings offering brief shielding, but soon they display infection markers too. Flesh shades near their visor openings, actions slow down, arms loosen weapons as fingers morph into bloated, pointless lumps. Time slips by as we drive further into the extraterrestrial settlement. Opposition turns irregular, then vanishes. The remnants no longer run but collapse in place, their forms entering the early phases of change. Some perish from this first dose, others endure, serving as breeders for the plague's evolution, their systems nurturing deadlier variants. As darkness descends over the seized metropolis, we set up an outpost in what seems a former shrine. The design here achieves even greater exactitude than in other areas. Each line and arc computed to mathematical perfection. Perfection defines the Xenos' sanctuaries. Effigies of their deities adorn the walls, portraying beings of unadulterated force, their shapes woven from interlinked geometric designs. Their cold elegance repulses me, a challenge to the magnificent disorder of living systems. Lord Postulus commands the icon's demolition not through simple destruction, but as an element of the mental assault we pursue in tandem with the viral onslaught. The aliens need to grasp that their deities of structure offer no shield against the core reality of being. Disorder invariably expands, and rot seizes everything eventually. While my comrades shatter the figures, I press on with recording the plague's advance across the regional biology. The rate of spread surpasses my estimates, a satisfying outcome worth noting for later study. The metropolis already bears marks of Nurgle's influence. Mushrooms emerge from fissures in the formerly pristine streets. Stagnant puddles appear in spots that were dry before. The atmosphere thickens with fungal particles, appearing as a verdant mist amid the deepening shadows. A sound pulls my focus toward a structure partly in ruins. Advancing with care, my bolt pistol at hand, I examine the interior. Within, I discover a cluster of Xenos clustered close, grown forms encircling their offspring in a pointless act of defense. Everyone displays severe infection symptoms, their formerly sleek hides bursting with pustules, their appendages bloated to nightmarish sizes. They stare at me through eyes obscured by fungal cataracts, yet they neither run nor strike. They've embraced their destiny. One of the elders speaks to me in a tone coarsened by the alteration of its speech organs. The dialect eludes me, but my armor's integrated interpreter delivers a rough equivalent. Why inflict this? What deity requires such brutality? I might dismiss the inquiry. I could eliminate them and resume my tasks. Yet, an element in the alien's stare urges me to reply, to express the doctrine that guides our endeavors. Your grasp of brutality is narrow, I inform it, my words issuing as a moist gurgle via my tainted vox emitter. You perceive just the outer display, the evident torment. You fail to perceive the profound reality that we deliver not demise, but evolution, not closure, but renewal. The device conveys my message into the creature's tongue, and I observe understanding flicker in its afflicted gaze, chased by dread more profound than its prior bodily alarm. You hold this conviction, it remarks, the words laden with sudden insight. You genuinely think you're aiding us. Conviction suggests uncertainty. I rectify. I grasp the reality of Nurgle's gift through direct encounter. I recognize the freedom in yielding to dissolution. Your kind grips the fantasy of endurance, of immobility. You construct your settlements to endure ages. You prolong your existences via machinery. You resist the inherent cycle using every tool available. Nevertheless, disorder overtakes everything. We simply hasten what must come. The Xenos trembles. I can't discern if from the illness's advance or the terror of my declaration. Our offspring, it motions toward the diminutive shapes sheltered in its rear. They've scarcely started existing. For an instant, a remnant awakens in me, an echo of a prior existence, of ideals once revered. The healer I once was would abhor the intentional contagion of civilians, much less the young. That self had sworn to mend, to safeguard vitality, to ease agony. What judgment would he pass on my current state? I dismiss the notion, seeing it as a perilous distraction. Such pondering breeds hesitation, and hesitation breeds collapse. I've witnessed countless comrades perish for lacking total devotion to our chosen route. Existence assumes diverse shapes. I explain to the Xenos, what you term demise is simply change. Your young will honor the grandfather in altered guises. They will encounter delights and torments surpassing your grasp. With that, I pivot and depart, abandoning them to their metamorphosis. No further words remain, no solace I can or ought to provide. Nurgle's way offers no simplicity, yet it alone confronts the essential reality of being. Nothing endures, nothing stays unaltered, every element must erode. As I step out of the edifice, full night has descended. This planet's 3 flawless orbs of differing scales throw a spectral glow across the fading urban sprawl. Under that illumination, our effort's development becomes clear. The precise symmetry of the structures already frays. Vital expansions interrupt the sharp edges, injecting turmoil into symmetry. My kin have set up a boundary near the shrine, although such measures prove mostly redundant now. The remaining aliens capable of resistance lie slain or crippled by affliction. Even so, ingrained routines endure after 10,000 years. The Death Guard were once the Emperor's most disciplined legions. Traces of that rigor still linger in our protocols, even if our outward form has decayed. I deliver my account to Lord Pustless, who acknowledges it through a cascade of moist gurgling sounds that could pass for mirth. "Fine efforts, apothecary," he rasps. "The grandfather will approve of your steadfastness." A nurgling clings to his pauldron, its tiny shape mimicking a grotesque version of Pustless in miniature. It lets out a shrill cackle and jabs a short finger toward me. The skeptic prevails against his own doubts. It chirps in a rasp like ripping vellum. His spirit rebels even as his limbs obey. Pustless fixes me with rotting eyes, his gaze sharpening abruptly. "Is this accurate, Brother Varkas? Does your core reject the grandfather's favors?" The inquiry mirrors Morbidox's prior questioning, hinting at a shared worry among my commanders. I select my phrasing with precision, knowing outright rejection would ring false, yet reluctant to reveal the depth of my inner conflict. "I offer loyal service," I state, echoing the response I provided to Morbidox. "My deeds further the grandfather's grand scheme." "Your deeds indeed," Pustless concedes, extending a hand to caress the nurgling, which purrs contentedly under his fingers. Yet Nurgle craves beyond simple compliance. He yearns for affection, for zeal, for rapturous yielding to his offerings. The enormous Death Guard rearranges himself on his palanquin, prompting the nurglings below to yelp as they scramble to reform their cluster. Maybe you need a deeper plunge into the grandfather's abundance. Before I can reply, a barrage of blasts shatters the darkness. The defenses have been violated. Swiveling toward the chaos, I spot agile flyers dipping close above the urban sprawl, their frames gleaming under the lunar glow with a steely sheen. Additional Xenos, though distinct from this planet's natives. These vessels display the sharp-edged style of the Aldari, particularly the Craftworld breed over their shadowed counterparts. "Fascinating," Pustless murmurs, apparently undisturbed by the assault. "The Eldari seldom meddle in outsiders' matters save when their stakes hang in the balance." I grasp his composure. The Eldari pose fierce adversaries. Their tech surpasses nearly all galactic civilizations, yet they remain brittle. Their numbers fade steadily, every casualty a sharp sting. They risk too much in a drawn-out clash with the Death Guard, our endurance rendering us tough prey for their strikes. The Flyers unleash troops in sleek plating, their motions a whirlwind of eerie velocity and poise. They brandish shuriken catapults, launchers that hurl razor-thin discs sharp enough to carve through power armor itself. A few of my comrades crumple as the lethal flurries exploit gaps and vulnerabilities in their rusted shells. I prime my bolt pistol and duck behind a toppled column, evaluating the fray with cool strategy. The Eldari raid strikes with surgical focus and unity, zeroing in on select death guard instead of broad melee. They pursue a target or individual. A burst of warp power signals a graver danger. An Eldari Farzer emerges in the temple's open yard. Her intricate helmet and intricately forged witchblade denote her status. She aims straight at me and utters an order in her species' lilting tongue. At once, 3 Eldari fighters peel away from the bulk and charge my position, closing the gap with otherworldly swiftness. I unleash my bolt pistol, the explosive shells bursting against warp barriers that ignite azure on every strike. One fighter topples when a fortunate round breaches the field, the projectile detonating inside his lithe frame and pulverizing his vitals. The pair arrives before I reload. I unsheathe my plague knife, its rusted edge coated in poisons deadly from the faintest graze. The initial Eldari evades my slash with mocking agility, as the next thrusts his weapon into a seam in my plating, piercing the suppurating tissue below. Agony ignites, sharp and urgent, but I brush it aside. Agony has shadowed me across ages untold. It stands as just one more feeling to register and set apart. I seize the limb of my stabber, my ceramite glove pulverizing the fragile bones in his forearm. He shrieks, the cry resembling shattered glass, and releases his sword. With my free hand, I ram the plague knife upward into his neck, right under his helmet's jaw. The edge slices through, and I savor the gratifying yield of tissue splitting under the point. The perishing Eldari spasms as the venoms flood his veins. His body jerks in a frenzy, fierce enough to tear him loose from my hold. He slumps, froth seeping from his visor, his form already crumbling inward as the virulent bugs ravage him. The remaining fighter lunges once more, swinging a power sword thrumming with pent-up force. I block with my plague knife, the alloy somehow withstands the energy field designed to cleave right through it. The gifts of Nurgle appear in diverse ways, and the endurance of our armaments against tech that ought to overpower them stands as one such wonder. During our clash, additional Death Guard units swarm toward our location, attracted by the uproar. The Eldari fighter, sensing the shift in the battlefield dynamics, pulls away with a flurry of acrobatic leaps that propel him out of my grasp. He links up with his allies, who have arrayed themselves in a protective ring encircling the distant Farseer. The Psyker Sorceress lifts her arms, and a shield of force materializes around her squad. Beyond this see-through veil, I observe her executing intricate motions with her fingers, crafting a more elaborate spell, a gateway to the webway. It dawns on me that they're forging a means of retreat. Lord Postulus roars commands, channeling every bit of ordnance toward the psychic enclosure. Bolter shells, contagion sprayers, and corruption catapults unleash their barrage, yet the shield endures the barrage. In mere moments, the glowing frame of a portal emerges at the rear of the Eldari cluster. They retreat through it sequentially, holding their guard until just the Farseer lingers. She pivots to confront me squarely, and even with her visage concealed by her helmet, I sense the intensity of her stare. Her words resonate inside my thoughts, sidestepping the material realm altogether. Your destiny remains unfixed, tainted soul. Choice lingers even now. Then she's vanished, gliding rearward into the portal, which folds shut with a rasp akin to ripping fabric. The abrupt quiet weighs heavily in the wake of the fray's turmoil. My comrades exchange puzzled glances, struggling to decipher the swift-focused assault. What goal did the Eldari pursue? Why hazard their valued existences against the Death Guard, only to pull back after inflicting scant harm? Lord Postulus calls me over, his countenance inscrutable under the incrustations of decay that have reshaped his former humanity. "The seer addressed you," he declares. "Not an inquiry, but a charge. What words did she impart?" I weigh the option of deceit, but recognize its pointlessness. Mind-to-mind exchanges leave echoes that a veteran like Postulus would surely perceive. She declared, "My path is not fixed, that I still have choice." Postulus falls quiet for an extended pause, the sole noise being the perpetual gurgle of the liquids swelling his distended body. "Fascinating," he utters at last. The Eldari possess renowned prescience. Their seers peer into potential tomorrows and occasionally intervene to steer events toward favored results. He inclines closer, his enormous mass teetering unstably atop the palanquin. What vision of tomorrow do you suppose she beheld, Brother Varys? What decision of yours alarms the Eldari sufficiently to launch this venture? I lack any response to offer him, no rationale that wouldn't deepen my peril. The Farseer's message reverberates in my consciousness, joined by Morbidox's caution and the Nurgling's indictment. 3 distinct voices, all converging on the identical truth. My devotion to Nurgle's way faces scrutiny not merely from my leaders, but from Chaos's foes themselves. I am Deathguard, I affirm at length. I have served as such for 10 millennia. Whatever tomorrow the seer envisions, it shall prove devoid of my disloyalty. Postulus inclines his head gradually, yet doubt lingers in his gaze. Time will reveal all, Brother Apothecary. Time will reveal all. The clash with the Eldari recedes into the past as our crusade advances over the condemned planet. One metropolis after another succumbs to our onslaught. Each morphs from crystalline symmetry into festering disorder. The Xenos' inhabitants diminish, not solely via mortality, but via mutation. Those enduring the first wave of contagion turn into vectors, their forms incubating fresh plague variants that they disseminate to their untouched kin. I press on with my responsibilities, recording the affliction's evolution, collecting specimens for later application, guaranteeing the peak potency of our viral arsenal. Still, I can't dispel the feeling of heightened scrutiny upon me. Nurglings trail my steps, making scant effort to hide as they dart after me amid the wreckage. My Deathguard kin eye me with faint alterations in bearing, a subtle fatigue implying they've received alerts concerning me. The crusade culminates as the last stronghold crumbles. The aliens mount no more opposition, those retaining any awareness having resigned to the certainty of their change. What started as warfare evolves into a sacred ceremony as we erect altars to Nurgle throughout the defiled terrain, dedicating the sphere to his worship. We board the Rotspire once more, its vast form suspended in the skies over the subjugated world like a swollen parasite engorged on its prey's vital fluids. The dropship's berth and chambers coated in the ooze from the organic craft. The bulkheads throb in possible eagerness or just instinctive reaction to provocation. I head toward my queue. I return to my quarters, determined to log the specimens I've gathered prior to briefing Lord Postulus. The hallways feel unusually deserted, lacking the typical bustle of plague-bearers and scurrying nurglings. This eerie quiet sets my nerves on edge, my fingers drifting toward the bolt gun holstered on my hip. The entrance to my room hangs slightly open, even though I'm positive I secured it before descending to the surface. I advance with care, sensing the potential for a trap. Using my weapon's muzzle to nudge the door wide, I survey the interior. Morbid lurks within, his enormous frame somehow fitting into the confines, defying all spatial logic. The chamber has warped to accommodate him, walls swelling outward, roof arching up to vaulted proportions. Existence warps around greater demons, yielding to their whims instead of binding them. Quote 4. The demon intones, his voice warm and affable, though his gaze pierces with evaluation. Quote 5. I incline my head, sliding the pistol away. Useless against such a being, anyway. Quote 6. Morbid grins, his features cracking wide as flesh at his lips splits faintly, oozing a pale yellow ichor. Quote 7. There's no use hiding it. As Nurgle's direct emissary, Morbidux commands perceptions that transcend the material world. He probably detects my inner conflict as plainly as I'd spot an infection in a sufferer. The Eldari Farseer, I confess. Her pronouncements linger in my mind. She mentioned options that persist, routes not fully set. Morbid dips his head, unperturbed. The Eldari perceive countless potential timelines, yet grasp only a fraction. They tamper with forces they barely fathom, twisting threads of destiny to suit their desires. He shifts closer, his pustulant visage nearing mine, but others share the sight of what might unfold. The demon stretches out a swollen limb, palm upturned in invitation. Grandfather dispatched me to guide you to his realm, Varkas. He yearns to reveal the realities you've long evaded, to resolve the doubts tormenting your core. I fixate on that proffered grasp, grasping its meaning. Unmediated union with Nurgle, the communion I've shunned across 10,000 years of devotion, the ultimate yielding of identity that I've defied amid endless wars and mutations. And if I decline? The query slips out unbidden, sealing my peril with its boldness. No true devotee of Nurgle would waver before such a chance. Morbid rumbles, a noise akin to gusts rustling through decayed foliage. So you affirm our fears, your loyalty fractures, your allegiance unfinished. The colossal appendage lingers in offer. But spurning it would be unwise, little brother. Grandfather extends few summons to his domain. Such privilege comes seldom and vanishes if ignored. I reflect on my life across these recent ages. The perpetual loop of conflict, taint, and ruin. The gradual dissolution of who I used to be. Recollections dimming like scrolls exposed to relentless light. What do I safeguard through defiance? What traces of the healer I once embodied survive to warrant protection? Yet, capitulation rings like defeat, the conclusive acknowledgement that no worthwhile essence endures from my past life, that my sworn vows, cherished ideals, and defining essence have all eroded irretrievably. Time slips away, morbid cautions. The Eldari already schemed to meddle more. Mechanisms spin that could strip this decision from you. With a feeling of destined resolve, I extend my armored fist to clasp his. The touch surges instantly, engulfing all. The world unravels about me. My quarter's limits give way to an infinite paradise of grotesque vegetation. Flora defying sanity thrives amid horrors, blossoms of swollen masses, stalks throbbing with tainted secretions. The atmosphere weighs thick with rot's perfume. Not fresh demise's bite, but the layered, nearly cloying bouquet of profound breakdown. Substances crumbling to basics, nourishing fresh life. I linger in Nurgle's garden, the pestilence deity's domain amid the Imperium. My bodily shell travels with me, or its echo does, my tainted plate and withered tissue mirroring their mortal guise. Yet here, the maladies within glow as vibrant allies, partners not burdens, each a vibrant proof of Nurgle's ingenuity. Beautiful, isn't it? The voice echoes from all directions and none, profoundly resonant, yet innocently youthful in its fervor. Nurgle himself remains absent in any tangible form, the chaos deity unseen. Maybe he embodies the garden itself, his awareness scattered across the infinite sprawl of tainted flora and poisonous lagoons. My greatest inventions allowed to expand and thrive beyond the limits of natural physics. I attempt a reply, yet my words falter, unequal to the challenge. How does one converse with a divinity? What phrases could span the divide between my finite mind and the boundless, unfathomable intellect of a warped being? No need to voice your thoughts, the voice reassures me. I perceive the ideas you struggle to express, the uncertainties you scarcely admit even inwardly. The inflection carries no fury, merely a fatherly forbearance that chills me more deeply than wrath ever could. You have fulfilled your duties admirably, Varkas, in spite of your hesitations. Your inventions disseminate my graces throughout the stars with elegant accuracy. Still, you withhold from yourself the satisfaction that ought to grace such labors. The vista alters around me, the garden withdrawing as fresh visions emerge. I behold myself from days long past, an apothecary among the Death Guard during their era of loyalty to the Emperor. My armor shines with meticulous upkeep, its verdant and ivory markings untouched by decay. I navigate the battle's debris, ministering to injured comrades, retrieving gene seed from the deceased with solemn devotion. You hold fast to this vision of your past, Nurgle's voice notes. This noble mender, this guardian of vitality and heritage. You suppose that by holding back from total acceptance of my boons, you retain a link to that earlier identity. The panorama transforms once more. Now I witness myself in the present, or at least my projection in material reality. My warped physique traverses the corridors of the Rotspire, carrying out tasks that mock my old role. I gather gene seed teeming with plague. I maintain mechanisms throbbing with aberrant vitality. I dispense remedies that propagate affliction instead of healing it. You detect opposition where harmony persists, Nurgle informs me, interpreting your present state as a distortion of your prior mission rather than its inevitable progression. The view shifts anew, revealing something unforeseen this time. My altered self attends to a Death Guard fighter whose alterations have advanced to unsustainable extremes, on the verge of devolving into senseless abomination. With exacting skill, I remove the volatile flesh, deploying agents that secure the surviving changes. The fighter endures, his mind preserved, his devotion to the Legion poised to persist. You continue to mend, Nurgle's voice highlights. You persist in safeguarding existence, albeit in altered ways. You deploy the talents that once shaped you, now directed to novel objectives. Additional visions arise and vanish. Me, concocting antidotes for plagues designed to annihilate rather than mutate. Fine-tuning the equilibrium of contagions for peak torment, absent fatality. Safeguarding the psyches of soldiers whose bodies have largely yielded to malignant proliferations. This is the reality you have long evaded, Nurgle declares, his timbre adopting an instructive quality, akin to an educator clarifying basics to a recalcitrant pupil. Death falls outside my realm, Varkus. It belongs to the anathema, the cadaver you formerly revered as emperor. He provides mere termination, utter finality. I grant perpetuity, ceaseless adaptable existence, the perpetual loop of rot and regeneration. The visions dissolve, returning me to the garden's embrace. Yet solitude evades me now. A silhouette advances amid the undergrowth, enormous and swollen, yet advancing with improbable elegance. Nurgle materializes in my presence. His physique, both abhorrent and oddly reassuring in its totality. Innumerable maladies ravage his frame. Nevertheless, he maintains flawless balance, unyielding to their onslaughts yet inextricably bound by them. You teeter at a pivotal juncture, he declares, his physical utterance even more overpowering than the ethereal one preceding it. The Eldari aim to divert you from my way, convinced they glimpse a destiny where you could advance their enigmatic agendas. They lack vision, fixating on isolated strands of potential without grasping the woven whole. He reaches out a limb in my direction, echoing Morbid's prior motion. I proffer insight, apothecary. I proffer direction, unshackled from the deceptions instilled in your formative years. I proffer liberation to accept your transformed self wholly, devoid of doubt or remorse. I gaze upon the visage of the deity I have honored across 10,000 years, and at last I perceive him not merely as a grotesque force of unadulterated taint, but as an essential offset to the barren rigidity embodied by the Emperor. Absent rot, regeneration falters. Absent demise, existence devolves into hollow recurrence. Absent illness, life forms forego fortitude. In that instant of revelation, I render my decision, not via speech or deliberate reflection, but via the utter relinquishment of my defiance. I lay myself bare for fully yielding to Nurgle's sway. I let the final walls in my psyche melt away like tissue eroded by corrosive bile. The impact hits instantly, reshaping everything. A rush of delight surges within me, a feeling I'd almost lost amid my endless years of loyal toil. Now, I perceive the splendor in the surrounding garden, the flawless rationale behind every affliction, the elegance woven into each motif of rot. I realize my role as an apothecary hasn't ended. It's simply advanced to honor a profounder reality than the doctrine I once followed. Nurgle's chuckles envelop me, cozy and sincerely delighted. Finally, he declares, you grasp it. Finally, you're wholly mine. Existence warps again, depositing me once more in my cabin on the Rotspire. Morbidu has vanished, though his essence persists in the room's reshaped contours, which haven't yet reverted to their prior form. Solitude wraps around me, but I feel more intertwined than ever before. The maladies coursing through my body hum with fresh vitality, a symphony of vital cycles exulting in their being. I approach a mirroring panel, eager to check if this inner shift has altered my outward form. The reflected countenance remains the marred features I've borne across countless centuries. Still, it appears transformed in some subtle way. The look, once etched with dour resolve and unyielding tolerance for perpetual torment, now conveys a quiet tranquility. Embracing my essence has ushered in calm, replacing the strain born of opposition. A noise pulls my focus toward the entrance. A nurgling peeks inside, its tiny frame trembling perhaps from eagerness. The grandfather approves. It chirps. The skeptic questions no longer. The mender welcomes the boon of plague. All celebrate. It darts off before I can reply, eager to proclaim my change. No shame stirs in me at having been the focus of such worry. Instead, a profound kinship blooms, deeper than anything since my entry into the Death Guard in that bygone existence. Filled with fresh resolve, I collect my apothecary implements and leave my quarters. The hallways feel alive now, no longer vacant. I detect Nurgle's minor minions everywhere, unseen by mortal sight, yet vivid to my heightened senses. They whirl and frolic in festivity, hailing me as a complete kin in their timeless revelry. I proceed to the septic vault, where fresh recruits await my care. Upon arrival, they eye me with the familiar mix of dread and awe I've witnessed innumerable times. Yet rather than cool impartiality, a true affection warms me toward these novices. They teeter on the cusp of a path I've only just finished, and I'll lead them with insights drawn from authentic trials. Brothers, I call to them, my tone firmer and more resonant than previously, the bubbling rasp now a melodic layer instead of a hindrance. This day, you claim the favors of our grandfather. This day, your metamorphosis commences without conclusion. This day, you enter a lineage that transcends the limits of era and realm. I lift my narthecium, its tainted tools shining under the chamber's fetid glow. The road forward promises agony beyond fancy, yet ecstasy past understanding. The mysteries of vitality and demise shall unfold for you, unveiling realities concealed from those who grasp at the illusory safety of rigidity and inertia. The initial recruit advances. His gaze gleams with febrile eagerness. In him, I glimpse my former self, rife with doubt veiled by grit. But whereas I spurned Nurgle's complete offerings for ages, he yields readily to the impending shift. As the extractor breaches his skin, injecting the tailored brew of contagions to spark his change, a profound correctness settles over me, absent since the dawn of my taint. This isn't a twisting of my apothecary vows. This marks their ultimate realization. I'm not extinguishing existence, but lifting it to realms surpassing standard fleshly bounds. The recruit inhales sharply as the plague grips him. His eyes flare wide at the initial jolt of alteration. But rather than the terror I've observed so often, his face turns to awe. I sense it, he murmurs. I sense the vitality amid the ruin. Indeed, I affirm, resting a fatherly palm on his arm. That's the initial revelation. Many others lie in store for you. Successively, the rest approach for their rituals. For every rite, I apply unprecedented precision, tailoring the pathogen mix to suit each one's unique frame. This transcends mere method or obligation now. It's craftsmanship, an inventive endeavor devoted to a deity of infinite creativity. With the final recruit blessed, a wave of feeling ripples across the vessel. The rot spire quakes, its living frameworks reacting to some outer force. We've reached our subsequent port. Another planet stands ready to embrace Nurgle's lavish favor. I fasten my gear and proceed to the command deck, anxious to uncover the fresh surface primed for my creative endeavors. The road ahead unfolds, not as a monotonous cycle of obligations, but as a pathway to perpetual evolution and revelation. By relinquishing the final traces of my past existence, I've not forfeited my sense of self, but unveiled it in its purest essence. I am Varus, healer of the Death Guard, loyal devotee of Nurgle, visionary of corruption and renewal, and I've never felt more. I've